In this video, I'm going to show you how to build a massive audience for your webinars. And I'm also going to show you how to turn this into a system that you can rely on for cash generation month over month. And I call this the webinar wealth engine. This is not simply you running webinars. This is you building out a highly optimized system and funnel so that you can run these month over month without burning out your audience and while growing your audience and your profits over time. And just real quick, stay to the end of the video. I'm going to share with you the #1 mistake I see a lot of business owners making with webinars. I want you to be able to avoid it. And I'm also going to give you my exact step-by-step checklist for running highly profitable webinars. This is more just like the technical side of things, like what softwares you need, what stuff you need to integrate. This is a checklist that I literally use for every webinar that I set up for the businesses that I work with. I update it all the time. So I'm going to give you access to it so you can save a copy. And then finally, I'm actually going to give you access to this entire mind map that I cover in this video. You'll be able to save a copy for yourself. You'll be able to modify it. It looks a little bit like this from a bird's eye view. You'll be able to get your own version of it and you can use it however you want. You can copy it exactly into your business. So let's get into it. Let's just assume that you've never run a webinar before, right? Let's just build the foundation here. We'll start with the basics. So where do you find the first batch of webinar attendees? You want to run a webinar, where are you going to get your audience from? Well, this is probably obvious, but there's two different sources. You have organic traffic and you have paid traffic. Organic traffic is anybody that finds you through some kind of social media algorithm. You're posting content, you've got subscribers on YouTube, and there's people that just happen across you because the algorithm recommended you. That's all organic. Those are people that you didn't pay to acquire. They just found you because you're just out there posting content, right? That's also warm traffic, typically. These are people that have probably seen you before if they liked some of your videos or whatever, or they already follow you, versus paid traffic, which is ads. You're paying for YouTube ads, your TikTok ads, Meta ads, whatever. So on the subject of paid traffic, I typically use Meta for webinars because it's just a great, easy to start. It's got great data, reasonably priced leads. If you're just starting, you probably don't want to risk too much with paid traffic. So when I first start working with a business, we're going to do webinars. I'll start them doing the webinar entirely with organic traffic. And then when we have success with it, we'll start implementing paid ads on top of that and then kind of build like a hybrid model, 2 different traffic sources. Because if you really want to scale in the future, you're going to need paid traffic anyway. So you've got traffic coming in. Now, where do you drive this traffic to promote your webinar? Well, what a lot of people do, and I see people doing this right now, and it's perfectly valid. It's very effective, but a lot of people will just drive their traffic to some kind of, YouTube Live or Facebook Live, Instagram Live, or even just Zoom. I know companies that are doing all of those things. The problem with that is anybody you send to those lives, you don't really capture them necessarily. They see your content, but it's not exclusive. Anybody can just wander into that webinar by chance. What I prefer to do is set up what I call the strategically crafted opt-in page. And the purpose of this is that your webinar becomes a lead magnet. You're saying, hey, I have this super valuable training. I'm going to give it to you. In exchange, you give me your name, your email address, and maybe your phone number. And people, if your webinar is good enough, they'll make that trade. That's a good trade. And the advantage of doing that is that you capture that person into your own private little ecosystem, your own little walled garden. And I'm going to keep referring to that walled garden, that little ecosystem again and again in this video because it's very important. Because it gets people off of social media. It gets them off of the algorithms where they're finding you by chance. The algorithm changes and suddenly they're no longer able to find you, even if they're following you. And, maybe you acquired them from paid ads. You're now able to permanently capture them and reach them again with emails and texts, and you can stay front of mind. So let's go back to the strategically crafted opt-in page. I keep mine very simple. There's a headline that makes some kind of big promise. There's a name capture, an email capture, and preferably also a phone number capture, and then a big button. My opt-in buttons are always huge. It improves conversions. This page, I say it's strategically crafted because the purpose of this page is just to get as many opt-ins as possible. And so you don't want a lot of fluff on the page. You don't want images, video, a ton of text, testimonials, any of that stuff. You can play around with it. You can split test it if you want. But I've found to maximize conversions, you literally want to get rid of all that extra stuff. The information about the webinar is going to be in the content that you're creating on social media or in the ad creatives that you're making. The opt-in page itself is completely stripped down to just the headline and then the opt-in information and then the button itself. Because the headline is really the only information that they're getting when they land on this page, you want it to hit really hard. You want it to be, you want your headline to completely summarize exactly what the webinar is and why they need to be there. So, for example, let's say you're an Amazon FBA guy, right? That's something you teach other people how to do. Your webinar title might be something like how to make your first $1,000 with Amazon FBA in 60 days. The reason this type of headline is so effective is because, like I said, it just condenses exactly what they're getting out of this in a single line. They're going to learn how to make $1,000 in this specific time frame using Amazon FBA. Short and sweet. Anybody that's relevant or interested or follows you already, they're going to read that headline and they're going to be excited about it, and they're going to want to register. Here's another example. This is one that I've used previously with some real estate clients that I work with. How to buy your first rental property with none of your own money down. Again, same as the last headline. It's very effective because you're making this big promise, and instead of a time frame, you're saying you don't need any money down on this property. So the format is basically this: how to achieve big promise in short time frame, or how to achieve big promise without doing blank. You can just use that basic structure. That's a great starting point for a good headline. You don't have to use that exact structure, but that's just if you're just looking for a quick way to name your webinar and to put the headline on your opt-in page, that's a good place to start. So now they've opted in to your strategically crafted opt-in page. Now what happens? Well, this is where the magic happens. This right here, this little part of the diagram, this little circular bit, is your ecosystem. It's your walled garden. Once you have somebody's email address and their SMS, you're no longer reliant on algorithms to be able to reach these people. You can just push them a message for free, basically free. Text message costs a little bit, but basically for free. And you can get in front of them every single day if you want. And that's why it's so great. And the people that are just like, he's sending me too many texts, too many emails, they can opt out. That's great too, because chances are if they opt out, they're probably not relevant to you anyway. They're not like your ideal client. So it's fine. They can opt out. Now they're in your email list or your text list. When they initially register, your entire goal is just to remind them of the webinar and try to get them to show up. But as I'm about to cover in a second, a lot of people aren't going to show up. So guess what? They're still in your email list. You still have their phone number. So they're still in your ecosystem. And if you're doing webinars on a consistent basis, maybe they missed the first webinar, you're going to remind them of the second one. You're going to remind them of the third one. Let's get into like attendance rates, right? Typically, webinar attendance rates look something like this. For paid, cold traffic, just a typical average, just across all industries, you're probably going to get about a 10% attendance rate, assuming you're not, assuming you're just doing the bare minimum, right? With organic traffic, people that already kind of know you, they follow you already, they know you a little bit, it's a little bit higher. The attendance rates are closer to 40%. If you use my system, the Webinar Wealth Engine, these are the numbers you can roughly expect. With cold traffic, this is an average I came up with a bunch of webinars that I've run. But cold traffic, I get as high as 20 to 25% attendance rate with people that are complete strangers. So I just said average 22%. And with warm traffic, 65% average. I've seen it higher than that, but this is the kind of attendance rates you're going to expect. So you might look at those numbers and say, wow, that's actually pretty low still. And that's true. However, here's the key. With cold traffic, somebody that opts in, specifically, let's say meta ads, right? They opt in, and then now they're in your little walled garden here. There's now seeing your emails, and maybe they see a webinar. As soon as they opt in to this ecosystem, they stop being cold. They're now seeing content of yours because you're going to be sending them emails, you're going to be sending them texts, and they might attend a webinar. There's a 22% chance that they'll attend that first webinar, right? So as soon as they're seeing your content, they're warming up. They're getting familiar with you. They're building trust. And if they see that webinar, they're now much warmer. So this little statistic right here is assuming they are complete strangers. They know nothing about you. There's a 22% chance that they're actually going to show up to the webinar. But as long as they're in your little ecosystem, they're going to get warmer and warmer and more used to your content, more used to your style, your knowledge, your authority, your experience, your testimonials. And then the probability that they're going to watch one of your next webinars increases farther and farther. And you already paid to acquire them once. You're not going to pay again. So they are now officially no longer cold traffic. So keep that in mind. All right, so let's go back to our little walled garden here. I said this little note here. I said this is where the magic happens. So at the beginning of the video, I said there's one big mistake that a lot of business owners are making. So when I look out on the internet, I study a lot of webinars that are happening in a lot of different industries. And one mistake that I see consistently over and over again in all different kinds of industries is these companies that are running webinars, but they're not doing it with this walled garden concept. They're just, if they have an opt-in of some kind, they're just sending a simple reminder like, hey, thanks for registering. The webinar's on Wednesday. And then Wednesday rolls around. They might send one in the morning. They go, hey, in 10 hours, we have that webinar that you signed up for. And then an hour before, hey, the webinar's in an hour, right? That's it. Very simple, very boring. That's not the way to do it. If you want to get your attendance rates up, you want to get your sales up, you actually have to have a strategy. And that's why we built the strategically crafted opt-in page so that we could get emails and SMS, their phone numbers. So there's 4 important purposes of your emails and your text. So let's break it down. Number 1, the number 1 reason is you're going to be building a tremendous amount of hype and FOMO around whatever your next webinar is. What you need to understand is your webinars are not just some video that you're doing, that you just happen to be doing. It's not just, we're going live. No, this is an event. You're going to build a lot of hype around it. You got content you're putting out on social media? That stuff should be as good as possible, but your webinar needs to be next level. Not in production value, but just in the presentation itself, the content you're covering, and the fact that it's live, the fact that people can show up and they can engage with you directly, that's what you're hyping up. When I write emails to create hype and FOMO, this is what I build them around. Benefits. So for example, the Amazon FBA, the benefit of learning Amazon FBA is that you have a side income stream so that you can eventually quit your job, right? That's the benefit. Or pain. I'll write a dedicated email just around pain. I might focus just on the job aspect of things. Like it's your boss is so mean to you. You have no real security because he could fire you at any time. You need to learn Amazon FBA so you could eventually escape. That's a pain-based email. Another type of email that I'll write is urgency. So I'll write an email just around the fact that this is an exclusive webinar. I'm only running it one time. The replay is only available for 24 hours. There's urgency, there's scarcity. And then another thing I love to do that noticeably boosts the attendance rates is to promise some kind of exclusive attendee-only gift through the emails. So for example, if you've got some kind of ebook that you normally sell for $10 or whatever, or you've got some kind of special training videos that you normally lock behind a paywall, or maybe you have some kind of behind the scenes that's special to this webinar, you could include that. And you can just put a price tag on it. You say, hey, if you attend this webinar, you're going to get $3,000 worth of gifts completely for free, but only if you show up, right? Okay, so these 4 things, the benefits, the pain, the urgency, the exclusive gifts, each of those are going to get their own dedicated email, right? So 1 benefit per email, 1 pain per email. I might talk about urgency once, make an email around that. I'm not going to try to jam all of these into one email. I'm going to space them out because when somebody signs up, they're going to be seeing basically daily emails until the time of the webinar. All right, so number 2, the second most important purpose of your email and text ecosystem. It's to get them to watch as many hours of your content as possible. Because on average, if you're selling a high ticket product, you've got a course, a coaching program, something like that, on average, a person needs to see about 7 hours of your content to know, like, and trust you enough to actually buy your product. That's just how it is. Now, if you have a lower ticket product, let's say you sell something at $50, maybe you've got like a ladder of different price points that you can work them up. It's going to take a lot less time than 7 hours. But let's just say you sell a $5,000 product. You're going to have to expect probably about around 7 hours of your content that they have to watch. So that's one of the main reasons for the way that I set this up. Once they're in your ecosystem, you're trying to warm them up as quickly as possible. Now, the webinars themselves, that's content. But again, only a certain percentage of those people are actually going to see the webinars. So the rest of your emails that you're sending out is just other types of content that you have. Maybe you link them occasionally to a post that you did on Twitter, or maybe you've got a YouTube channel. This works very effectively. You're driving people from your email list to watch content on YouTube. And then the emails themselves are content. So you're trying to get them to consume 7 hours total. That includes all types of content, including the webinars. The third most important purpose for your emails and your texts is to educate and entertain. And this relates directly to number 1 and number 2, but it's important enough to split it off into its own little box here. So Ben Settle, who is probably the best email marketer in the game right now, he calls this infotainment. You don't want to bore people. When you send emails, each email has got to be good. You can't just send an email that says, hey, by the way, you signed up for a webinar on Wednesday. Those types of emails get very low engagement, very low open rates. You don't want to be messing with that. Instead, what you do is, let's say the Amazon FBA, for example. You send an email that's titled something like 3 tips to increase your profit margins. And then you go through the 3 tips. And then at the end of the email, you say, oh, by the way, Wednesday, that webinar you signed up for, just a reminder, here's your unique access link, right? That's how you do that. So you're educating them. And then hopefully if you've got, a good sense of humor or something, you can entertain them as well. But if you're, without humor, you can just inject a real life story, something that's compelling and makes the 3 bullet points you gave them easier to remember, easier to consume. And that is infotainment in a nutshell. So the fourth most important purpose of your email and your text walled garden is to build a genuine one-on-one connection with people. The reason webinars are so powerful in the first place in 2025 is because webinars feel inherently more personal than most other types of social media content. Right now, you're watching a video. This is not engaging really at all compared to a webinar because I can't talk directly to you. If you post in the chat, I won't see it till hours later. There's a time and a distance component here that makes it too impersonal. As compared to a webinar, there's still that distance component, but there's an instant feedback loop where somebody could type in the live chat and you could point it out. You could say them by name. You could answer their question directly. You can make them feel seen. And that is so important to building trust and getting people to eventually buy your products because that is a genuine one-on-one connection. Again, assuming a lot of people aren't going to see your webinars, you have to use your email and your SMS to build that one-on-one connection instead. And so the way I do that is I ask open-ended questions in my emails, for example. So the 3 bullet points to increase your profitability with Amazon FBA, right? I'll write that out. I'll make it entertaining, include a story with it. And at the end, I'll say something like, what methods have you used to increase your profitability, right? Just an open-ended question, something they can hit reply to and just send me a sentence, right? And then I can go through my emails later and I can just respond to them directly, ask follow-up questions, qualify them, and just build a deeper connection with them. What's even more powerful than email is text. Text allows you to build that one-on-one connection even more so. Here's a great way that I love to do this. I'll send as soon as a person registers, I'll send an automated text that says, hey, thank you for registering for the webinar on Wednesday. Oh, by the way, just curious, do you have experience with blank? Do you own rental properties? Do you already have an Amazon FBA store? Whatever. You're just asking them a question. A lot of people will respond to that text because It's a text message. It's very personal and went directly to their phone. Very unlikely that they're going to opt out of your text message because they just consented to receiving texts on your opt-in page. So now is your chance to build that one-on-one. And so what a lot of people do is they'll hire a VA, an appointment setter or whatever, to just manage the texts and emails to build that connection. It's very, very important though to get that connection built and to get people to show up to the webinars, build that trust, and eventually sell your product. All right, so let's just do a quick overview. So you've got some kind of traffic, you're running to your strategically crafted opt-in page. It's just a simple headline with an opt-in form and a big button, and then you're using that to drive them into your own little walled garden, your own little ecosystem, and that's where the magic happens. The purpose of this ecosystem, your email list and your text list, is literally just to get them to watch more of your content, but in a controlled environment where you're not relying on algorithms to do it for you. You're pushing content in front of them, and a core component of that is the webinars, because webinars offer the highest one-on-one engagement and trust building you could possibly get. But again, a lot of people aren't going to attend, even if you optimize the crap out of this. So assuming they don't attend, the emails and texts serve as a way to build that trust, build that connection, build that hype, entertain them, and eventually get them to buy your products. That is the webinar wealth engine. Obviously, I didn't cover any of the technical sides of things. I didn't go into any kind of the software. I didn't talk about how everything plugs together or what I recommend. That's where the checklist comes in. If you want to grab the checklist, it's down in the description. If you're a business owner, you're interested in running webinars, maybe you've done webinars before, you just want to improve them, or maybe you just want somebody to deal with all the technical stuff, book a call with me down below. I can help you out. I can either consult you or I can do all of the work for you. I can set every aspect of this for you so that you can build out your own webinar wealth engine. Other than that, I have tons of other videos about webinars on my channel. Go check it out. Like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.